Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Today's presentation is the final part of 3 presentations, which are all part of Webinar 5. All of these are about general philosophy. In the first part, Shorter introduced the scientific method. In the second part, Jason looked at where philosophy and science differ. In this final part, we're looking at how do we claim Vedanta is scientific. So here's what we're going to do in this presentation. We're going to explore whether Vedanta is scientific using some well-known texts, such as the Bhagavad Gita, the Mandukya Upanishad, the Ishavasya Upanishad, and the Patanjali Yoga. In the end, you have to decide for yourself. But before we look at the evidence, let's start with the basics. So what is Vedanta? I don't know. Perhaps Vedanta is religion. Let's assume that at the beginning. In Guru Muni Narana Prasad's Basic Lessons on India's Wisdom, there's a lesson 9, which is on science and religion. And Guru writes, what scientists try to find out is the underlying reality of physical objects. What the seers of religions have visualized as God is the reality underlying both the physical and mental phenomena. We have seen that God is Sat, Chit, and Ananda at the same time. But the field of inquiry in science is Sat, or existence aspect alone. So what's the point of Vedanta and science? Both are actually seeking the same thing. The curiosity that Scholar talked about in the scientific method, and the questions Jason posed when comparing science with philosophy, both come together in trying to understand the great mystery of life. And this mystery has confounded science, it has intrigued philosophers, and it's inspired artists and mystics. So let's take an example of a Vedantic text. And this example is from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 8. And the commentary is from Scott Titesworth of the Portland Gurukula in USA. So Scott writes, contemplatively speaking, the point source of the Absolute is within and expands outward. Consciousness resembles the Big Bang theory of physics, with all its potentials compressed into a singularity called a zygote that explodes into manifestation with a period of hyperinflation followed by normal inflation. The universe too began from a singularity and expanded rapidly to form what we now believe we know, a mind-bogglingly vast space drowned in incomprehensibly timeless time. We imagine the natural laws we observe here are true for the entire universe, because somehow they must have been contained in that original seed or singularity. Otherwise, how does everything happen with such uniformity? What makes the atoms spin, the planets revolve? What is life and what is consciousness? Were they too contained in the original impulse or their accidental afterthoughts of creation? A little reflection reveals that it is the greatest miracle that we exist at all, and the universe is miracle piled upon miracle, one after another, erupting in an endless, exuberant stream. Who knew? The Bhagavad Gita asks such questions. Let's take a look at some favorite examples in Vedanta. We see the waves in the ocean, and we forget to see the underlying reality of the water that is the ocean. In a piece of rope, we think we see a snake. We no longer see the clay. Instead, we see the form the clay takes. And in the mother of pearl, we think we see silver. In all of these examples, there is an underlying reality which is actually true. Let's have a look at the language of science. Back in February 2021, the Mars rover successfully landed on a former lake crater on the Mars surface. The Mars rover, its name is called Curiosity. But what is the Mars rover? It's actually a tool to discover whether life existed on Mars. In September 2008, the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator, the Large Hadron Collider, went live. What is the Large Hadron Collider? Well, it's a tool for discovering elementary objects, trying to understand the deep structure of space and time, and also trying to understand the relationship between quantum mechanics and general relativity. And science comes up with formula, and this is a formula that everyone will recognize. We may not fully understand it individually, but we recognize the formula. And that formula describes the relationship between mass and energy. And that thought experiment by Einstein inspired the scientists to build the Large Hadron Collider. So science has the concept of a theoretical science as well as an empirical and experimental science. If we take the look at the language of Vedanta, we discover that the rishis have been exploring through inner mind engineering for thousands of years. And they have a tool as well. The name of that tool is Sanskrit and is designed scientifically to convey the seer's vision. And Vedanta has formula 2. So we saw Einstein's E equals mc squared. Vedanta has a symbol which is described in the Mandukya Upanishad. And that symbol represents a waking world that we are all in right now, where we take in the world through our 5 senses. There's a dreaming world where we have sensual experience, but that sensual experience is internally generated. We have a world where we have deep relaxation that we call deep sleep. And finally, at the end of all, there is a silence which is represented by Turiya, and it seems to be the tapestry in which all the other 3 states are woven into. Let's take a look at something slightly different to science fiction. Science fiction is a forerunner to reality because it utilizes the brilliance of imagination to devise concepts which sometimes turn into reality. What do I mean by that? Well, do you remember the communicator in the Star Trek TV programs? That communicator has become the mobile phone that we all use every day. In Arthur C. Clarke's Space Odyssey, there was a concept of a computer, a fictional artificial intelligence computer called HAL. Today, we are starting to use talking computers like Alexa and Google. And and if we look at that science fiction, we could say that the science fiction writer is as close to Vedanta as he is to science. And science fiction has no limits to dreaming, and nor do Vedantists have limits to dreaming either. However, science views this as fiction, although they both dream high and they allow us to enjoy fantastically new perspectives and worlds. Let's take a look at the world of mathematics. One day, Archimedes had a problem. The king wanted him to prove that his new crown was actually made of pure gold, and the goldsmith wasn't cheating him. And Archimedes was not allowed to modify the crown in any way, but he had to prove that it was made out of pure gold. So how will Archimedes do this? Brilliant as a mathematician as he was, he couldn't figure it out, how to measure the volume of such an irregular object. So Archimedes went for a bath, and as he climbed into the water, he observed that the water rose, and he suddenly and mysteriously understood the solution to his problem, because the displacement of the water was directly proportional to the volume of the object placed into it. And with this newfound knowledge, he managed to prove that the new crown was not in fact pure gold. So the question here is, where did the solution to Archimedes come from? Was it the bathtub that gave him the answer, or was it something else? When we deeply think about a problem and it becomes firmly deposited within our psyche, something remarkable happens when we follow that with deep relaxation. Is this what contemplation and meditation is all about? Because the result is a discovery coming deep within ourselves. Vedanta also has mathematics. We typically start and end our wisdom classes with a peace innovation. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Ashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In the English translation to this, if we replace the word plenitude with the word infinity, we can read this as, that is infinity, this is infinity, infinity emanates from infinity, on infinity being taken from infinity, infinity alone remains. Om, peace, peace, peace. The problem is that the truth is usually hidden from us. The Ishavasya Upanishad is the only Upanishad that Narayana Guru has translated in Malayalam. Let's take a look at Mantra 15 from the original Sanskrit version. It says that the face of truth is covered with a golden disc, and it requests that the Pushan, the great nourisher that is the sun, to please remove that disc so we can see what reality actually is rather than the glitter of gold. We could say Vedanta is a technology. What is technology? Technology is the practical application of science. At the beginning of the presentation, we asked whether Vedanta is religion. So can Vedanta be seen as technology? Because Vedanta allows us to maximize our potential for human beingness. And in addition to seeking the truth of Sat, Vedanta also integrates Chit, our consciousness, the light within us, with the ultimate gain of Ananda, the general good and the good of all. When the astronauts went out to space to boldly go where no man has gone before, and they arrived at the moon, discovered it was quite a grey object in the midst of a bleak space. However, when they decided to look back from where they came, they discovered in that same bleak space a colorful blue marble that they recognized as their home. We have the technology to build a rocket and go far, far, far away, only to discover what we already possess. Are we talking about science or Vedanta now? The main discipline of a yogi is the withdrawing the inner organs from the multitudinous impacts of the senses And what we mean by the inner organs, these are the inner facilities, such as the mind, memory, intellect, and the eye sense. And by withdrawing those inner organs and turning them to the very source of one's own inner illumination, which is attuned to the pure existence, pure subsistence, and pure value, that is that Sat Chit Ananda. And the title of this slide, The Yogi's Mastery Extends from the Finest Atom to the Greatest Infinity, is from the commentary of the Patanjali Yoga Shastra. And this information came from sutras from chapter 1, sutras 40 and 41. Here is a world-famous broadcaster of natural history documentaries. 6 months ago, he delivered a documentary with a personal witness statement of his life and the future. What humans are doing to planet Earth has dire consequences, because David Attenborough realized it is no longer possible to make the same films he once did, because the habitat no longer exists. And we each bear responsibility, he concludes, to continue. Humans require more than intelligence. We require wisdom. We could say Vedanta is like a cake because its ingredients are science, philosophy, religion, and the tribulations of life. If we bake that cake well, with each slice we can enjoy the mystery of life. How better to conclude a talk on science and philosophy and Vedanta by talking about Guru, Narayana Guru of Vedanta. And the example we're taking here is from the Atmopasha Satakam, verse 73. And Guru Nitya's translation reads, in one substance there are many, and in many things there is one meaning. Reasoning thus, everything becomes inseparably inclusive in knowledge. Not all know this great secret. Guru Nitya Chaitanya Yadi, in his commentary, That Alone the Core Wisdom, writes, Guru says here, in the many, plural, the many things, there is one meaning. Also in the one thing, you can find many meanings. The three primary principles of our universe are pure existence, pure knowledge, and supreme value. Out of existence, you can make millions of existential situations, and out of knowledge, you can invent millions of miracles. But these only have meaning when the third factor, the supreme value, is brought in. Only then can we decide which are good and which are bad, which are adorable and which are repulsive. If the supreme value you care for is that which unites everything from the simple reason of what it is, that is love. This love is not the libidinal force of which Freud speaks. It's not even the first pole of love and strife, which are seen as two contending forces by Democritus. Probably the word love itself is wrong. It can be considered as that harmony which can be brought about by the synthesis of pairs of opposites like love and strife. And Guru finally says, opposites can fall in such a way that they strike a balance out of which an overarching harmony emerges. I've really enjoyed working on this presentation, working with Shola and Jason, meeting, discussing, preparing, and learning about all three topics in this webinar. We hope you enjoyed these presentations too.